Right. What is up, my entertainment junkies? This is a reaction video on why Marines are getting out. It is from 2 years ago, but knowing the Marine Corps, it's probably still accurate. And throughout this video, I'm gonna tell some of my experiences from the Marine Corps. For a little background on me, because I never actually really talked about this in depth. I was in the Marine Corps from 2014 to 2019. And yes, for most of you that seems weird having a 5-year contract, but I was in the aviation field. And in the Marine Corps, if your schooling is more than a year long or close to a year long, you're going to have a 5-year contract instead of a 4-year contract, so that they can get as much out of you as they can. But yeah, I got out. Honorable discharge. Was not the best Marine. Yada yada. I'll go into a lot of stuff about that because I have a feeling that a few things that led me to get out and led me to not be the best Marine are going to be stated in this video. So let's see what this 2-year-old video it says.
One of the best decisions I've ever made.
So if you haven't noticed, the military is running into a slight recruiting problem. Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps comes out and says, we got to retain better, invest better in troops. And I wanted to present to you a staff sergeant still in, a lance corporal who's a year out, and the sergeant major. Let's see if we can figure out how we can retain more and get people more fired up in the Marine Corps. Let's go.
So the Marine Corps is looking to retain and mature its force. Why and how do you plan to do that?
Retaining and maturing the force, not a new concept, quite frankly.
So the Marine Corps historically has been pretty good about getting people to sign up. Not as many challenges as, say, the Army, but make sure to take a look in the description for the two gentlemen's channel. And we got the Sergeant Major here. Let's figure out what the problem is. How do we retain more people?
I think what I would offer as an explanation of why it's a big deal now is, number one, as we see the Commandant, and this isn't new to this Commandant, we've always invested a great deal in how we train and educate Marines.
Alright. Here's one thing you do. Allow them to have full sleeves. I mean, like, y'all want Marines to look professional? Marines are known for 2 things. Destroying shit and getting shit pregnant. What is full sleeves going to damage reputation based on those?
Funding. Oh my gosh, funding is terrible in the Marine Corps Plus.
Oh yeah, funding. But what was it? I'm trying to think. It was some politician's wife, I think a president's wife, that said Marines have the cleanest bodies, the filthiest. I'd have to look it up, but pretty much we are professional, but we are also very vulgar. So why not full sleeves?
Obviously, for funding.
Oh yeah, I'm also out, and for those of you who know about the extra and active duty time, I am past my inactive duty too, so unless there's a serious problem where they will draft someone who's 28 and has no obligation anymore, I have no chance to come back to the Marines.
We get the least out of every other branch, so we get the least amount of money to work with.
All right, you heard what the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps said, this fine young staff sergeant. So funding, that's been a thing since I joined the Marine Corps. We're talking 30 years ago, right? That funding sucked, and we still hear funding. We might as well take funding off the table because we ain't getting it. I mean, you remember the old...
Okay, not even funding off the table because most Marines don't even see that. That's a... like, our equipment is used in secondhand and shit like that. Old as hell. We get some new stuff, but not a lot. So funding is not a reason that Marines are getting out, because most likely, unless you're a lieutenants, captains, in charge of actual people and controlling the money, you are not going to even worry about the budget.
Up gear, any of you jarheads that spent time at, say, an Air Force base, you go to the dining hall, and you go to the dorm, and you go back to your barracks as a young lance corporal, and you realize it's a little bit different a deal. So the funding ain't going to happen.
We have not had a necessity to do or a calling to do is retain more of that investment.
You have.
I was tired of being treated like a child.
What were we talking about?
There it is. Treat them with respect. It's like, it's hard to explain, but you have freedom, but yeah, you're gonna have their same talks every time. Like, you don't remember, like, you don't know what to do. They don't... it's hard because they'll at the same time they'll take accountability for you, but they'll give a lot of people leniency based on favoritism. They'll also act like you don't know how to do shit until you prove them otherwise. Which, yeah, it makes sense, but they're grown-ass adults. They went through the same boot camp. They know how to clean. They know how to do everything that they need to do. Stop micromanaging them. Unless they have done stuff in the past to warrant it.
Term Marine, at the end of the first contract. Our current model lets go intentionally about 75% of who we recruited just 4 years ago.
Now, why do you think it is that 75% of the guys you train for maybe a year-ish, you're let go? Do you think they just lose interest in the oorah devil dog stuff? They
Nope.
get the old eat the apple core, if you heard that one before. Do you think it's the letdown, or just people do their one hitch? We're going to get the other devil dog who got out as Lance Corporal's opinion on it. And some of this is just people grow out of it. They grow up. They don't decide it's not for them.
5% of
Yeah.
who we recruited just 4 years.
I'm going to tell you this. The most motivated people will quickly figure out that, yeah, no, the military is not for me. And that's perfectly fine. Hell, you still went through it. You still did your contractually obligated 4, 5, 6, however many years. No shame on getting out if you find out it's not for you.
Years ago.
I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to tell myself when I wake up.
Right.
I want to tell myself when I go to work. I want to tell myself, when I'm off. And I was tired. I was tired of not being able to go home. I was tired of having to ask another grown man, can I go home and see my family?
What we want to do is we want to make sure that we give.
Okay, he comes off a little entitled, but that is actually also a thing. You're going to be working longer hours for bullshit reasons. And they have no incentive not to do that. Because if you walk off, that's punishment and you lose rank, lose pay, stuff like that. You don't go to jail. You have to be missing for like 30 days to go to jail. But you do get punished like that. Extra duty shit like that. You work 16 hours, you want to go home. Nope, not until you're released. But that is one thing, and they have no incentive to not do that anymore because you're not paid by the hour. You're paid by the month. You're paid by yearly, your salary. So they can keep you as long as they want. They're not paying you any extra. The only time they pay you extra is on deployment.
Marines opportunity who want, number one, to stay in the Marine Corps. Number two, who have the talent and the skills to succeed, continue to succeed in the Marine Corps.
Let's talk about what the young devil dog who just got out, he said he wanted to do his own thing, right? Get up when you want, grow your hair how you want. I heard a lot of guys say that, right? But the reality is when you get out, you're still beholden to somebody, unless you're self-employed. Most people aren't. They're working somewhere. And that young jarhead was in the infantry. So you don't have any skills that transfer. So guess what? Ooh. You're doing probably a shitty job unless you go to college. I get it. But you're always going to be beholden to somebody. But I did hear that sentiment a lot, even 30 years ago. Let's keep moving.
And they tried. People tried to get me to stay in. They were like, you know what, Cantrell will let you be a recruiter. You can go recruit out of whatever city, whatever town. They even said I can go down to the Pacific recruiting station. That's how bad they wanted me to stay in. And that was after everything that happened to me, after I had been shitted on for having a YouTube channel and trying to bring in people and all this stuff, and now you want me to work for you.
All right, so his story is a common theme. He was a corporal, got busted to Lance Corporal. Take a look at his channel for those details. But you get a lot of guys that...
I will guarantee you, if he got busted down to Lance Corporal, they were not asking him to do recruiting duty. I think you have to be a sergeant to do recruiting duty. Maybe a corporal. Oh, Alright, I'm about to go into rank structures real quick. So, E1, think about that as base level, private. That's everybody's E1 when they get in, if you're enlisted. If you have college experience, ROTC, JROTC experience, there's some stuff you can do recruiting. You can graduate boot camp immediately as an E2, which is second step. Then there's Lance Corporal, which is E3. Those are the bottom line you have no real responsibilities, but you kind of do, but not really. And then you hit corporal, which is NC, non-commissioned officer, and you are in charge of people, and you have officially leadership roles. Because you have a leadership role as long as there's somebody lower ranked than you, and then you're in charge of them. But then after corporal, E4 is E5, which is sergeant, then E6 is staff sergeant, and the higher up you go, the more responsibility you go. 7 is gunnery sergeant. E8 is either master sergeant or... Fuck, I can't remember. First sergeant. Sorry, been out for a while. And then E9 is sergeant major or master gunnery sergeant, which they have... Technically, sergeant major and first sergeant have more responsibility because they're in charge of a whole platoon. In my case, it was squadron because we were an aircraft squadron. But they essentially get paid the same and no real difference other than a gunnery sergeant and a master guns. Right, master sergeant and a master guns are in charge of whatever job they were in charge of when they were in. And then there's one sergeant major that in the Marine Corps that gets a special rank. It's called sergeant major in the Marine Corps. They get special insignia, and they're essentially in charge of all the Marine Corps enlisted. And then you go into warrant officer ranks, which is warrant officer 1, warrant officer, chief warrant officer 2, chief warrant officer 3, chief warrant officer 4, and chief warrant officer 5. They essentially don't really get a commission, but they're still officers. They still get salutes, stuff like that. And they are still in charge of the same job that they got in as. And then you have the officer ranks, which is 01 is lieutenant. Every officer who gets a commission gets a lieutenant. 02 is second lieutenant. In the air wing, that's mostly the new people in this squadron, and you're gonna see a lot more of them. Then you have captains, which is E3. I mean 03. Why did I say E? 03 captain, 04 major, 05 lieutenant colonel, and then which is going to be your XO in the aircraft squadron, and then 06, which is colonel, the full bird colonel, which is going to be your commanding officer of the aircraft squadron. And then after that, you get into the general ranks, 07 through 010. But essentially, the higher you go, the more bullshit you have to take into, and the more politics go into it. And the lower you are, the more in control of your job and in control of other people who are actually doing their job it is.
Feel like the Corps screwing them over and they get jaded. That's a common theme, and it's a leadership issue. You know, leadership can say, hey, young devil dog, you screwed up, but we love you. And a lot of times that don't happen.
And then develop a more mature force. What does that mean? Rather than...
Speaking of accountability, there is a big accountability problem. It's either... So, NJPs are like a way to punish Marines without actually having them go full-blown court-martial, which would be like going to court in civilian terms. But accountability is... It's either you have favoritism and they won't hold you accountable, or it's a shitty squadron, they won't hold you accountable or tell you how to better yourself. Like in one of my cases, I really needed to go to mental, but no one ever told me, hey, you probably need to go to mental for other reasons, for sleep reasons. And they just under the table punished me, like doing a lot of bullshit, but not really NJP'd me, or when they should have. And then there's the other side of the coin where they do NJP you, and even if you don't need it, they will just throw the book at you. They will give you the maximum punishment that they can, even though it warranted. Like I said, mine was oversleeping issues because of insomnia. Afterwards, I did go to mental health, and it did get better, but they should have told me, hey, maybe you should go to mental health or go see this getting checked out beforehand. And when I got in trouble for it, they pretty much gave me the maximum they could, instead of maybe slighting it, because this is obviously a problem, and he was never told that he needs opportunity. And that's a bigger thing, because there's also a stigma between mental health and going to medical, where they will literally call you a bitch. It sucks, but yeah.
Retrain.
If you need help, go get help. Don't worry about what other people think.
A group of new Marines. You keep more of the ones you've trained.
Do not take it the wrong way. I do not hate the Marine Corps. Marine Corps, great gig. I wish I didn't have the experience I
Agree. I am the same one. I did not hate it. I hated some of it, but a lot of it was cool.
did.
So here you go. He's talking about retaining Marines you've trained, right? So this guy had NJP, gets busted, but he sounds like, if you listen to his other videos, he really liked it. He got jaded after getting burned over something that he thought was stupid, and maybe it's just a life lesson. But you got to retain these guys. I had a guy track me down I knew after 30 years in the Marine Corps. I knew at the time I met him, as young corporals, he was going to be a lifer. That was going to be his thing. And some people love it. But you got to encourage this a little bit, because they're looking outside and going, it may be better if I get out of the Corps. And they realize it's kind of the same shit, just wrapped differently.
Was still in.
Oh yeah, that's the good thing is, so right after I got in trouble for something, but I didn't get NJP'd or anything. It was one of those under table things. My unit was getting deployed, and they sent me on to other duties, and they didn't have me deploy with them. But whenever those duties expired, they were so deployed, so I went to my sister squadron, and I was treated so much fucking better, even though I've had a bad rap. And if they looked at my record, it would have shown bad. They treated me so much fucking better. If I were in that squadron before, and not my squadron, my parents' squadron, I would have definitely probably re-enlisted if I had this opportunity. So that's a big thing, is a bad command will ruin a good Marine. A bad command will drain the motivation out of you.
Marine Corps. You start to retrain, re-educate, advance those skills, get more and more to the perfection of it is in the art of war. What's the advantage? The advantage is that you have a group of Marines now that have got the reps and sets, who are now capable of taking on the responsibilities the Commandant talked about in his planning.
Oh yeah, and specifically for my job, have job-based bonuses. Because I worked on an aircraft. Why would I continue working on an aircraft in the Marine Corps when I already have all the knowledge and training I need? I can get out making six-digit salary versus the Marine Corps is $50,000, $60,000 a year. So if they really want to retain people, have job-based bonuses. Because otherwise, they ain't going to keep anybody. Because, like I said, infantry makes $50,000. They have no training to go back into the civilian world in. Maybe cops. All these heavy equipment operators, they will get out because heavy equipment operators in the civilian world make a lot of money. For me, aircraft technicians make a shit ton of money, and they will definitely get out because, like I said, why would I stay in when I have less freedoms and make less pay? And I think factoring in all the money that you would lose having to pay your own housing and stuff, you still make more money.
Guidance of, pushing those authorities down to the lowest level possible.
Hurry up and wait. It's up there, and the top things I hate about the Marine Corps is because it's one of those things that wastes so many people's time, and it just shows how unorganized units can be whenever hurry up and waits.
Well, here's the thing. Toxic leadership, you hear that all the time. But shitty leadership can get guys that are going to be lifers when you met them to get out of the Marine Corps after one hit. You're going to go, this sucks. I don't want to do it. What happens a lot of times is you get some gunnery sergeants trying to prove a point. Maybe he's a shitty leader. Or even worse, you get a young officer, right, that wants to prove the point. PT's at 0500. You need to show up at 0400. And eventually you go, okay, I know when to show up. I don't need you to babysit me.
That can only be done through
That is the thing that
experience.
actually
And experience is a time factor. It's an individual, are you capable factor, but really in terms of maturing the force, it's about retaining our Marines.
Yeah, that would be.
How do you go about doing that? And there's
God bless his soul, but Sergeant Major Black here, the talking points. If you want to retain guys, right, you talk to people like these two fellas on YouTube, the one guy who's still in, the guy who got out. You talk to veterans sub 5 years out and you say, what could we have done to keep you in? Is there anything? You don't just sit there in some bubble talking to other O's and realize.
Okay, so this isn't really relevant because I know right when I got out, they sort of fixed this. But it pissed me off because I didn't eat at the chow hall often. But they take money out of your account, out of your paycheck for chow hall expenses, whether you go there or not. Like, you can never step foot in chow hall, that money still gets taken out of your paycheck. And it pissed me off because 6 months before I got out, they started doing it to where they take the money out of your paycheck retroactively. So you go there 90 times a month, which is 3 meals a day, you get that much money taken out. You go there 30 times a month, which is 1 meal and chow hall a day, you get that much taken out. But when I was in until the 6 months before I left, they were taking the same amount out of everybody's check who did not get extra money for their food. And nope, it don't matter.
Oh, this is what we need to do. Here's what the marketing data tells us. Now, you may have done that. Don't get me wrong. But you got a pool of people who can give you advice. And some of the same complaints I hear in this video from guys that were fresh out or still in are the same shit I heard when I was in. So it's not getting better.
Follow-on question, right? How do you go about that? Number one, in order to stay in the Marine Corps, you got first want to be a Marine. Yeah. The number one incentive for recruiters to have someone join the Marine Corps is, do you want to be a Marine? The number one incentive to stay in the Marine Corps is, do you want to be a Marine? That's number one.
And I almost got to the point where I hated putting on the uniform. I hated the fact that people knew I was a Marine once I went out in town.
I left this clip in because I remember at Camp Pendleton, we did everything we could and we went out in town to not look like jarheads because there was a stereotype. Certain ladies didn't want to mess with jarheads, military area. I'm not sure we hated it for the same reasons as him. But my situation was different. I didn't get, the NJP. I could see how that could make you jaded, especially if you're, say, at a Camp Lejeune in a town where it's just the Marine Corps base. There's not a whole lot going on. You wanted to slide out off work and just be a normal human, not be classified as the jarhead, the troublemaker, the bar fight guy.
Secondly, it's a whole list of other things, and we can talk about them in a subsequent question, but the onus on retaining the force and why and what's the incentive to do so is to stay a United States Marine.
So what are some of the roadblocks that you're seeing, or why are Marines getting out?
All right, so I want you guys to put in the comments what you think the reasons people are getting out of the military in general.
It's money, treated like a child, and bad leadership. And also waking up at 4 in the morning to go work out whenever a lot of them work out right after work too. Because the kind of workouts that they do for PT are not good for what a lot of people want to work out.
Well, the Marine Corps is fine. I want to see if they line up with what the Sergeant Major's telling us. Is he reading off a script? Has he done his homework?
He is.
I want to believe he has.
Number one on the list is probably quality of life. What does that mean? Quality of life means...
Quality of life means don't throw us in barracks that are fucking condemned. Fucking dealt with black mold and y'all kept telling me it was my fault for not keeping the barracks clean when I could freaking bleach it and it came back a week later. Yes, I lived in condemned buildings.
Like the way it is. The majority of the force is single, the majority of the force live in the barracks, and if the quality of our living conditions isn't where the Marines want it to be, arguably where I think it should be, then what's the option? Let me live off the installation.
Well, I heard that statement. I harkened back the first time I went to March Air Force Base. I went up there, met some people at the E-Club. They said, do you want to go back to our dorm? Next morning was the dining hall. And I realized, wow, I think it's a little different in the Air Force. And so there is a big difference in accommodations, we'll call it, across the services. And the Marine Corps has always had pretty shitty ones.
If we can't do that, we got to make a choice.
As far as infrastructure, we're starting to get better. We're starting to catch up to the other branches in terms of buildings and barracks and everything of those of that nature. The gear that we have some of the gear that we have is very old, outdated, obsolete. We need to get rid of it.
Let's talk about gear for a second. We had Alice packs, and I remember getting them from Supply. These things were Vietnam-era web gear, Alice packs, the canteens, the whole thing. I'm in boot camp. I'm at the rifle range. I'm trying to hit the target. Can't do it. Instructor comes over and goes, go get another rifle. So, yeah, the stuff you get, the equipment, is always the shit. And you really find out it's crappy when you get on other services. You go, wow, we got really the garbage. We got the lowest level, the redhead stepchild shit of the military.
The better question is, well, how come we're not not pushing that a little harder as far as how we can, maybe work on that. Everything is driven by resources. Everything is driven by resources. I think what you've seen in the Commandant's planning here the last couple of years, and
When you hear everything's driven by resources, like no shit, Sherlock. But if you're having to recycle guys every hitch, or every 4 years, you got to get a new guy to fill that squad leader role or fire team leader. You think you go, well, maybe it's better for us financially to retain guys than it is to lose guys. That would be common sense in most businesses.
Or another one, get more modern equipment that's easier to train people on. Then you don't matter if you have to cycle people out or in. Because if you don't have a recruiting issue and you have a retention issue, that doesn't matter if you can easily train them to take over the spots that are lost.
Somehow the military, in particular the Marine Corps, doesn't get it because I guess they were churning and burning. Now you got to teach these guys complicated communication systems. Depending on the MOS, can be long schooling. But, this is common sense for any other business in the world.
as we go into the future with how we request our resources, there's a heavy emphasis on that quality of life. I'm speaking about barracks in particular, but it's any number of things I can bring up and follow on questions. But I'd start there. Quality of food in our chow halls, dining facilities. It's a whole different, that's a question.
So, I'm trying to remember who does our food. I think it's Metco did the food for the Marine Corps. Yeah, they do the same. They are the same company who does the food for the prisons. Yeah, we are literally getting fed prison food. Except for our omelets. We have a joke in the Marine Corps that our cooks spend, 4 weeks in training. The first week is making all the other food, and then the whole 3 other weeks is how to do omelets. Because those are the best omelets I've ever had.
Command climate comes up a lot, but what does command climate mean? Command climate does not mean the commander and the senior,
Command climate is the War College word for leadership. How is the leadership? Is it consistent across units?
Nope.
Are we having young lieutenants that are morons coming in? Are we having platoon sergeants that are morons? And the understanding that we want to retain these guys. Let's not shit on them all the time. This ain't boot camp.
leaders of the organization. Usually it's, if you're a corporal, it's the sergeant. It's the lieutenant. Not that they're poor quality, but young people leading young people, you asked about maturing the force, you get a dynamic there. Maturing the leadership.
Accountability is very huge in the Marine Corps, but if it takes you 4 hours to get accountability, that just tells you right there that your unit's probably not that good at getting accountability. You know what I'm saying?
So you're going to hear a lot of guys get out because you go leadership, toxic leadership, something of that sort. I had this bright idea a long time ago. How about we make the leaders, the company commanders, the best leaders in a bunch of people? So we just don't take somebody who's got 4 years in the military, OCS, college degree, and now they're the company commander. When you got a gunnery sergeant who may be locked on, great leadership, can read people, understands when to push hard and pull back. We don't do that. That's probably one of the few businesses that you don't move up in management based on merit. If you're enlisted, you stay there. You could be smarter than any dumbass general, but you're going to stay as a senior enlisted guy. Why do we do that? It doesn't make any sense today.
Leadership only care about the power of being, in that leadership role. Some of them are so power hungry that they think that even outside the Marine Corps, they have the same power. And it's just funny because it's like, man, if we were just regular people, you would be nothing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you would have no power over me.
The number one thing I hate the most in the Marine Corps is mass punishment.
So mass punishment, you get it. It happens in boot camp. You're a squad leader. Your squad mess up, you pay.
No, I'm sorry, it's not
but as you move on, you get outside of training.
That's everywhere.
The mass punishment doesn't make any sense because after a while, you're like, I'm not the up here. That guy's the address him. But let's say a room's dirty at the barracks. All of a sudden, the whole week.
I will not lie. I was the reason for some of the mass punishment too. I won't.
And secured, you're cleaning barracks rooms. You're having inspections. That kind of shit gets old. You don't feel like an adult. You're like, I didn't do this. It's not my problem. This guy's an F-up. But they gear a lot of things towards the lowest level moron.
That's the other thing. Once a week, your room is inspected to be 100% clean, and it's like spotless clean. Most people do the spotless clean that we do every week, once a month or once every 3 months. Why? And no, they're not searching for contraband because you just throw that in your wall locker and lock it, and they can't access that unless they're doing a special kind of room inspection, which doesn't happen that often. But so why with the room inspections?
And then everybody pays. Stand by.
Mass punishment is one of those things.
Oh yeah, and if you live on base housing or off base, not in the barracks, you also don't get room inspection. So it's kind of bullshit.
I will never understand. However, there is a place for mass punishment. Or there's a place for those who be like, well, mass punishment is one team, one fight. No, bullshit. It's not no one team, one fight whenever it comes to certain shit that Marines are getting punished for.
Let me give you a couple examples. Guys at Pendleton go down to Tijuana, get in trouble. Then all of a sudden, Liberty's cured for that unit because a couple morons didn't know how to manage their own shit. That's what he's talking about here. A couple guys go out in town, get DUIs. All of a sudden, there's drinking restrictions at the barracks. We don't need to coddle everybody. I get it to a point because you got a bunch of young guys, testosterone driven, but it's not good for retention long term.
That gets after that command climate thing. And lastly, I gotta be honest with you, there's always families involved. There's a kind of a saying, you recruit a Marine, you retain a family.
And what the Sergeant Major said there's a maybe. You're talking guys from 0 to 4 years getting out after one hitch. Most of them, if they have a family, it's a small family, 1 or 2 kids. They're already divorced. You know how this goes. But it's not the people who've got the families and have got a couple kids in different schools. But the Marine Corps is terrible at this, say, compared to the Air Force. A guy could be at a duty station for 10 years at the Air Force. Meanwhile, in the Marine Corps, every 3 or 4 years, you got to move around to move up the ladder, the food chain. What would your recommendations be for the Sergeant Major? Seems like his heart's in the right place, has some good talking points. But some of the complaints from these young devil dogs, the same things I heard when I was in. We're talking 30 plus years ago, I heard these things. And we're hearing it today. So what's the answer? What's the fix? Thanks for watching.
All right.
Number one thing.
All right. Let me go full screen here. Oh, wait. I didn't know I could do that. Oh, God. I forgot about that. All right. So, long story short, the whole... what was I thinking about? Oh, yeah, the unstable living situation. Yeah, you're going to have people move, but if you make it less likely that they just move every 4 years for the sake of moving them every 4 years, like keeping them in a squadron, that would also boost retention because they don't have to worry about uprooting and moving their whole family. But those are the reasons that video showed people getting out. For those who served too, tell me, why did y'all get out? Why did you stay in? I want to hear why you stayed in too, because it's not one-sided. But thumbs up if you liked the video, thumbs down if you didn't, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace!